All right, everyone, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is going to be another series in the Master Trader series. Again, returning guest, Chartman Dan from the Chart Guys. We're going to be featuring some MJ stock analysis, a few other things going on here as we get into the crazy time here, home stretch for the election. And we're going to talk some strategies about that here. Anyway, Chartman Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
Awesome. Always good to talk to you. So, yeah, let's get right into it. Before we get really started though, let's talk about so your experience. We were kind of in the same boat. You had it much worse than I did, being in, I believe, Western North Carolina. Um, and obviously Helene. I had it worse with Milton. Helene didn't really affect me, but yeah, any experiences from that? You were out of no power for I think you said 18 days.
Power was about a week. Internet was over a month. Just got that
Internet,
back a few
okay.
days ago. But yeah, a lot of people still don't have drinking water. They've got water, but it's full of chlorine and all kinds of chemicals and stuff. So we're still in the process of getting it back. But a lot of the takeaways, number one, the community aspect was awesome. Everybody stepped up, clearing roads instantly, helping each other. Very little fighting or, people. I was very impressed with. I'm pretty cynical about humanity as a whole. I love people, I love individuals, I love small communities. At a whole, I'm cynical about humanity, but honestly, my faith in humanity is at an all-time high after this experience. And so that was a big takeaway. And also just, the necessities of the value. We look at stocks and charts and things, and we look at perception and value and how something in one scenario can have so much more value in a different scenario. And I give the example of fresh drinking water. There were some neighbors near me who didn't have fresh drinking water after 3 days, and a gallon of fresh drinking water after a few days becomes very, very valuable when normally it's like a buck 30 or whatever at the store. So that was an interesting takeaway as well.
Yeah, we were just talking about before we went on. I had after Milton, I had probably enough gas. There was one point I had enough gas to get me like maybe 2 days if I stretched it. And so they finally got gas to Tampa Bay area, and it was very limited though. And I ended up waiting for 2 hours at the gas station in line, and wasn't I the first car cut off when they ran out? And I'm like, we're going around the place like, guys, I'll give you $20. I have $20 cash on me. Like, can I have a gallon for just from your can? Like, pour some, please. So yeah, I mean, you find out, how the numbers on a screen can be very different, um, in the right circumstance. But yeah, definitely very perspective changing, how fragile the grid is too, when these things happen.
Yeah,
But
everybody talks about, hoard as much Bitcoin as you can and hold it till you die or whatever. But it's like, man, if you could change some of these digital numbers into tangible things, land, having a creek. I chose a land with a creek on my property intentionally, knowing if anything happens, I want fresh water nearby. And I didn't have to worry about water because I just filter my creek right there when everything, hit the fan. And so things like that, again, just under the right circumstances, everything shifts about our perspective and the value of things. Value is so subjective, and you really get a sense of that.
100%. Well, glad that we all got out of it okay. Real quick though, how was your experience with Starlink? Because that's something I definitely thought of as I was kind of coming out of this. Obviously, being a trader, you can't run your business without internet. So,
Yeah, I didn't get it for a few weeks, but when I finally got it, it's first off, let me preface it by saying, I have it set up on a hill that's clear. There's a little bit of tree disruption. If it were on my roof, it'd be a little bit better. I'd probably get some better readings and stuff. But it's great when you have nothing. But compared to, my cable that I'm used to, it doesn't compare. I couldn't do live streaming stuff. It wasn't fast enough. And the morning when the bell rings and things are fast paced, there would be just little glitches where it would lose connection for like 3 seconds and the numbers would stop moving and then they'd rapidly catch up. And I just couldn't trade the open on Starlink with any kind of confidence. So Not ideal, but again, when you're comparing it to you either got nothing or you got this, it's a godsend. So it all depends on what situation you're in.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I was in a trade the day before, before we lost the internet, and I completely, I just had to just send my members, we're going to be on our own because I can't even refresh. There's so many people on the towers right now that I can't even get prints. So luckily it worked out. So, it was into CPI and we had a bond trade. So luckily it worked out okay. But yeah, it's definitely makes you, feel very vulnerable. So
And there are things as traders that we can do to try and, bridge the gap. For example, right over here next to me, I've got I don't even know what to call it, but it's a unit that plugs into the wall. It's a little battery so that if the power flickers or if it goes out for, 5 minutes, it stays connected. So I don't lose, my internet and my computer doesn't shut down right when the power flickers because
yeah.
it's running on that little battery thing. So there's a number of things that you can look into to, just have a little bit of a buffer for, when worst case scenario happens and when you're in the middle of a trade.
Yeah, I have one of those as well. The with the little 9-volt thing that runs off of yeah, those are nice. So, all right, well, anyway, let's get into it here. So, we're gonna primarily talk about marijuana stocks. We've talked about them plenty of times before. We talked about that at the beginning of, I think it was April, was our last video, and we really warned about kind of like the summer bleed and kind of that it might not necessarily even be a bad thing to have them digest, those big gains that we had off the rescheduling hype. But so far they have bled down, and really recently, really in the last week, specifically Florida stocks, really gave back that nice pop that we had from a week or two ago. So is this kind of now just down to a coin flip here? We don't really have technical positioning anymore on like an MSOS. I mean, TCNNF is still easily the head and shoulders leader, but the MSOS seems to have is just not really in technical shape, to where you'd say, okay, buyers have a very good support to work off of. So we just kind of have to hope essentially that you're going to get something, and what obviously hope's not a strategy, but it's kind of what it is right now.
Yeah, it's a very polarizing scenario that we're in. It's either going to be bullish or bearish. And I didn't even do a video this past weekend just because, what am I going to say? I'm going to say if it passes, it's
Yeah.
bullish and we're going to go up higher. And if it doesn't pass, we're going to drop. And, where the sector's at right now, the only reason I have any interest in it long is because the Florida charts look so different. You look at Curaleaf, you look at GTBIF, Green Thumb, and they're just not bullish charts. And something has to change. What you have happening right now is Trulieve is lifting up the sector and these others are holding it back. And that's why MSOS is just, not really getting us a clear trend one direction or the other. But you do have, the new messaging over the last few weeks out of, Kamala Harris is saying that she's for full legalization, which is certainly better than the prior narrative, which was nobody should be in jail for smoking marijuana. Okay, we get it. You keep repeating it. We got it. This is at least something more tangible. If she wins, do I think she's going to get the ball rolling on legalization anytime soon? No. It's just, the narratives to get the votes in the last minute, and maybe it'll happen eventually. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I would definitely anticipate that if she were to win, that we would see some nice upside because the market's been pricing in, for the last month, pricing in Trump, and then the last few days, shifting a little bit to price in Kamala a bit. We were just talking today, solar and cannabis having a pretty good day after the weekend, Iowa poll, whatever it was.
Yeah. If this, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about like the short term here, but if this doesn't work out, we just got to go out to December, right? Which is the rescheduling.
Yeah, but even that, it's like a hearing. And then after the hearing, you have the thing. And then it's just such a long process. It's not like we find out December if it's going to be scheduled 3 or not. It's a long, slow process, like anything in politics. And that's why, time is on the bears side in this sector because you have to have the headlines that get the herd to have new money come in. And if you don't have the sexy headline, then it's stagnant and it's much easier for bears to take advantage of the lack of volume. And so, hope is not a strategy, as you said, and that's absolutely true. But the key when you're going into an event like this, whether it's earnings, FOMC, whatever it is is to position in advance and take some partial profit. So you've got a cushion. So I am going to be swinging, some TCNNF remaining position, about 40% of my all-in position from a couple months ago. And worst case scenario, I'm just going to get back some profits, and that's a-okay.
Right. And again, if you wanted to play, if somebody wanted to play with like some lotto calls or something like that, that's a totally different thing, but you're essentially you're just, gambling on the outcome essentially, which if you're doing that, you scratch off ticket, that's fine. But yeah, we're kind of at that point where we had that nice break, that 8% move, and then I loved it because we had it, we didn't gap up the next day and said, oh, this is good. We're gonna just side, this is perfect. And then we had that big rollover, and now we don't really have that 720 or so support anymore on the MSOS. Is there anything else we could see? I mean, like TCNNF right now, having a decent day today, it's off the highs. Are there any levels we definitely would want to see? I'm assuming like 1140, 1135 would be an area we would need to hold at least on the daily time frame
Yeah,
here.
that's exactly right. There's a very solid base there. We held it early October, 1130s, and then again just recently end of October. So that support has proven solid time and time again here. But where we stand, as you mentioned, right now we're at 1254 on the US side, and it's pretty much smack dab in the middle of the high of the move and the low of consolidation. And so again, we're going back to the high on a bull outcome and back to the low on a bear outcome. And it's just you have when you're in this kind of gamble scenario, you have to be real with yourself. I get messages of people being like, Florida's 100% going to pass, and it's just like nothing in the world is 100%. It's not 100%. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. Like, you got to be
Mm,
real with yourself, because it's definitely not 100%. And if you're positioning for that, you're exposing yourself to massive losses if
yeah.
you're wrong.
If it was 100% going to pass, these charts I don't think would be acting the way that they are. Somebody would have very clear idea that it's going to pass, and they would already be, accumulating that. I guess perhaps, maybe, I don't know. And again, this is all just, it doesn't matter until we find out, but maybe for the Bulls here, that last little shakeout, I mean, I don't see anybody hyped about the sector. So if you do get news is that are positive, hey, like it's kind of hated again, and you could see a surprise to the upside if we get or at least a rush into to position into it if we get favorable.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple outcomes here, because you could have, Florida pass and you get Trump, or Florida pass and you get Harris, or it fails and you get one, or it fails and you get the other. And, best case, just because she's said full legalization, would be Florida passes and you get Harris. We can run after the vote if that were to happen. And any other combo, if Florida fails, I'm not interested in this sector anytime soon. I'm definitely going to be selling everything. People are going to be looking to short Florida names, as they should, and they're going to drop hard. And so, that for me is, and I always say, it's opportunity cost. If my attention is on this sector, that means my attention is not on the uranium names that are running, or whatever else is the flavor of the week in terms of volatility and opportunity. So, if this sector wants to keep my attention, we need Amendment 3 to pass in Florida, and then we'll take it from there and talk about Schedule 3 and things beyond that.
Yeah, and it seems like there is. I know that we didn't really have. We just mentioned there's the technical positioning really isn't there, but if we go back to 2020, it seems like we were in kind of a similar setup. And I'm just going to go off the MJ. I don't know if you can bring it up on your charts here, but we kind of sold off a little bit into the election, and then we bid up a little bit, and then we got the blue wave, and we had a massive squeeze. And all of the if you just look at, I don't think the MSOS goes that far back, but just going off the MJ, I know it's
Um,
you get a pretty clear. I think the Canadian names were a little hotter back then, but you had kind of a weakening kind of rollover, and then we got a little bit of a bit, and then they just kind of squeezed up, and that's when that was the precursor to when Tilray went up to like $50 or whatever it was,
yeah. Yeah, that was end of the year and start of the new year. And that also does align with, the S&P 500 was
putting in
in
that low.
in euphoria mode, just
Yeah,
running new all-time highs. We're back. We've recovered from the CVID dump, and that
yeah,
was a factor as well. But yeah, you're right. There was definitely upside post the election, but it also fairly quickly marked that top once, the
yeah.
market started to realize, oh yeah, nothing's going to immediately change. It's going to take a ton of time. And then as it went year by year and nothing has changed federally, everybody was like, oh, here we go again, in terms of you say something and you get no action, no follow through.
Yeah. And it seems like that's how it's going to be. Like we're going to get, I mean, my ultimate goal would be to catch like an actual sustainable bull market. I mean, these squeezes are nice, but they're very short-lived. And I mean, that's going to take, I mean, if that ever happens, it's going to take time. But I mean, if you were able to capture the lows here in something that could actually put in a bottom, like something like the uranium sector has done, where it's rallying for multiple years and shorts keep trying to sell the rip and they keep failing, I think that would be like the ultimate goal, but it just seems like it's so far away at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I got CGC on the screen right now, and it's just sideways for over a year, and we just have to see this break bull. And if it's going to break bull from where we stand, we need 180% move. So
Yeah.
there's still a lot of work to be done. And it would, we'll see it happening in terms of volume. The big pumps have big volume, but the clear thing has been that they only last a day, as you mentioned. They're short-lived in terms of that volume pop, and then it just fades back, and then there's no interest again. And so we need to see, retail getting interested again. The only retail that's interested in this sector are mostly the bag holders at this point, just keeping it real. And again, you've got to have that new money coming in, and that has hope and is looking longer term over the next 3 4 years, whatever. And we just don't have that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, right at this point, it just seems like your best case scenario is, you have hedge funds who have their hedges, you have the short sellers who have their hedges, they have to have them for the election, and those could unwind, which could cause a big pop here. But it doesn't seem like we're going to get anything sustainable. It could, it still could be good enough to make some good money, but it's the rescheduling and the Florida, it's just a lot. It's a process with these bureaucracies, as we know.
Yeah, and things change fast in this sector. I mean, even just today, last week it was all weakness, and then you get that little bit of a shift in the poll, and maybe Kamala has a little bit of a higher probability of winning, and just like that, CGC goes 15% plus on the day. And so, that can happen. You can get these fast, hard moves in the sector. So it's the kind of thing, again, it's always volume. You're not going to get any kind of meaningful move without volume. So just pay attention to volume. You look at CGC and say, Friday, the first 15 minutes of trading, we had 286,000 shares traded. And today it was 1.5 million. So you're talking
Yeah.
500% plus first 15-minute volume. You don't move up in this sector without volume. So you might as well set volume alerts and be, paying attention to that aspect, because that tells you something's up if there's very high volume right out of the gate like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a sector with small and micro cap companies. So yeah, again, with marijuana stocks, I mean, I had this planned for, like months, like, oh, can't wait to talk about this. And, now it just seems like it's down to a 50-50, which is a shame. But are there any other sectors? I know we kind of touched on solar. I kind of floated this idea on my channel a little bit lately. If you zoom out on TAN, you can, there's a bit of a falling wedge. Yeah, you got it. There's falling wedge there. And, think about it logically. If Trump win is priced in, that means the downside is likely factored in. But if Kamala surprises, you could have a surprise of the upside. So seems risk reward here, risking very little and could be making a lot.
Yeah, heading into this, I've been playing DJT and all that leading up into the vote. I traded, my cannabis trade was based on the lead up into the vote. The only thing I'm interested in post vote, as far as laying out a game plan, is if Kamala wins, I know that the solar sector likely sees a solid leg up. And, I'd be looking for at least the 50s. And so I will be interested in the solar sector here. And, FSLR, generally speaking, has been one of the stronger names overall. We hit an all-time high back in the summer of this prior year while TAN was still doing absolutely nothing. So, I'd be wanting to keep an eye on the stronger individual names, but the sector as a whole, again, zoom out to the 12-month chart. This is every candlestick's a year. I'm expecting a higher low. This was the last election run where we went 500% plus, and we're giving a lot of it back. But when you see massive volatility in both directions, you scout an equilibrium as the most likely scenario. So if Kamala does win, I do think we can put in a longer term bottom. And again, it's a very different setup because heading into the last election, the vote was somewhere around here. We had the run up into it. We had a bit more afterwards, but we're coming from a very different standpoint into this election. I'm way less interested in longing after this has already happened versus longing, you
Right.
know, in that weakness.
Yeah, and if you go back to that long-term chart too, I mean, you can see it took us basically what 7 6 7 years or something to break out of 35 to $40, and now we're back there. So you'd have to think that's where buyers were based for however many years. It's probably not going to break, very easily. So I mean, again, you probably have a good amount of support to be cushioned into it at this current stage.
Yeah, you're right. This is the 6 month chart now, and you can see the initial, is active here as support, now resistance, and now trying to be support again. So
Yeah.
definitely a zone in the low 40s that's worth paying attention to.
Yeah. Are any other sectors we might be looking at? I mean, uranium's kind of cooled off a little bit here. Not that that's super political. I mean, it's political, but not as much partisan. Any other hot sectors? We talked about DJT. That's trying to put in a higher low here today. A lot of my traders like trading this thing too, because of
Yeah,
the
I've
volatility.
liked it
They
a
love the
lot.
volatility in that thing.
Oh, nice. We had a bull break. I was watching this 15-minute equilibrium all morning. Clear bull
Yeah.
break to new high. Yeah, I was looking for the daily higher low on Friday and positioned and stopped out with a small win. But this is the kind of chart where I'd be looking for something like this and then a daily lower high. But again, another one that's going to be I think this is the top being set for a pretty long time. And even if Trump
Yeah.
wins, we can definitely head back up to mid to upper 40s. But that was a climax top if you'll ever see one in terms of a short squeeze.
Big hanging man.
Climax. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't the volatility is going to stick around for a while, especially who wins. We're counting votes. There's challenges, so that's great. I love the volatility in that regard, and yeah, I'd be looking for some bounce follow through, and then eventually a daily lower high. But obviously depends on what we get the next few days in terms of if Kamala wins. This stock definitely is going to be in big trouble. Bears are going to be jumping all over this for a long term
Yeah.
short, like trying to ride this back down to, $10.
And I was just telling my traders too, like a lot of the time, what can happen is a lot of people are looking for the after what happens after the result, which makes sense. But a lot of the time, these sector rotations can start beforehand. If you get to a max positioning beforehand, well, then you're at max positioning. Doesn't matter what the outcome is now. So, you can look for pivots, you can look for climaxes before the event happens. And I think we're likely gonna. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think we're likely going to get some type of contest, and that doesn't mean that we can't have pivots in the stock market and in certain sectors anyway. Before there's a decided winner per se.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as the market as a whole, the broader market, I don't think there's a whole lot hinging on which candidate's going to win. You look historically, Republicans, Democrats. I mean, it's all the same
Yeah,
machine to a certain degree. These little pockets of very you got private prisons like Geo, that's clearly a Republican stock sector. And here was the run up with Trump's pricing in of probabilities for 4 weeks. And then most recently, the same thing as DJT, just finding a top and selling off as the probabilities shift a little bit. But yeah, as
yeah,
far as, clearly politicized sectors, it's cannabis, solar, and private prisons and of course DJT has its own little thing. But that's pretty much how I'm viewing it, and everything else. I'm not even factoring in the election, and I'm just using the charts and price levels.
even defense stock, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, they've topped out recently, and that's with Iran banging the war drums every day too. So I mean, they topped out a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but yeah, just as you mentioned, a lot of things getting priced in advance and then adjusting um, pre-vote.
Yeah, and a lot of thing that people don't think about, there's billions and billions and billions of dollars of hedges in both directions that are decaying every single day that they're out of the money, you know, they start to lose value. Those hedges start to get unwound, and then they start going the other direction, and people wonder why. But it's just a functioning of the market. It's not necessarily um, politically driven. It's just a positioning effect.
Yeah, and that's, people like to look at options, activity, and rightfully so. There's some clues in there, but people often make assumptions. There's a ton of puts were just bought on the S&P 500. Someone's got a big bear bet. Well, they could have $1 billion long common
Yeah,
shares if they're just hedging. Like, how we don't know what they're doing. I look at Mark Cuban talking about when he had a huge stake in, I don't know if it was Yahoo or what.
Yahoo. Yeah,
Yeah. And so then, he buys he buys enough puts to cover his 1 point whatever billion position. And if you're just watching the option chain, it looks like a huge bearish bet. Meanwhile, he was just getting break even where he can't give back any of the money that
right,
he now made. So again, you never know what's going on behind the scenes.
right. All right, let's get over here to yeah, let's just do a little bit more. We kind of touched a little bit on the broad market, but yeah, any kind of snapshot here that we're looking at with the Qs, the spiders. I noticed today the Russell definitely leading Russell, and the Nasdaq seems to be putting in a higher low intraday versus the S&P showing a little bit of weakness. Interesting. Are we seeing small cap leadership here? Is that anything to be
Yes.
watching? I noticed semiconductors having a decent day here.
Yeah, that's
Um,
new. IWM, I've been watching the correlation between the financial sector, XLF and IWM for a very long time. And my conclusion was IWM is just a leveraged XLF in both directions. It can't do anything bullish without XLF going up. And today is the first day where that's glaringly standing out as different. I'm pulling up my Fidelity screen real quick, but we're up 0.8% in IWM while we're down 0.8% in XLF.
Yeah,
So that's a
KRE
very,
down over 0.5% too.
yeah, that's a very stark difference to the relationship that has been consistent for months. And so, I've got IWM on watch, and the biotech sector, XBI on the
Hmm.
weekly perspective, volatility
XBI
is
looks
coming here.
looking pretty interesting too.
Yeah, we're real tight and volatility is coming here. And we got this brick wall at 103. If that breaks, we're going to hit, 2.5 year plus highs.
I
So
I may
definitely
or may not have
watching.
a long in XBI, just a disclosure.
Friday stood out and we're getting a
Yep,
little follow
yep,
through. Get over 156 and we're at,
yep.
5, 6 week highs. So XBI is a top watch for me in November for sure.
Another thing I noticed here today, that I've been watching very closely recently is XLE, XOP, and OIH are bid, even as crude was kind of backing off the highs. XLE was still bidding up. Lately, XLE has been selling off more when crude sells off, and today it seems to be firming up. So it's almost as if there's some rotation, pre-election rotation, kind of going on in the energy sector as well.
Yeah, and it
It's
was
starting to show relative strength here.
I don't watch the energy sector very closely. And, my screen that I just showed you, Fidelity, is what I look at every morning. And I had SPY slightly green, QQQ red, XLF solid red. And I was looking around like, what's holding up the S&P 500 right now? And it was energy. And that was standing out today. So again, just some breaks. When you watch the market every single day, you get these relationships. They become very familiar, these correlations. And so when they shift for, again, the first time in months, it definitely glaringly stands out. And it can only last a day sometimes and it goes right back to normal, but it perks your attention. You say, okay, this is different. This is a shift in the market environment. I pay attention to that. And does it stay different now the next few days? And of course, we got the FOMC on Thursday to throw another curveball into the equation.
Hmm.
But yeah, just relationship shifting a bit today. And it's now a question of does that last all week and beyond?
Yeah, another sector too, airlines, looking at UAL, this stock's been a powerhouse lately, and today it's leading to the downside, lower lows everywhere. Jets, the same thing. So definitely starting to see some kind of rotation going on here. With that said, any levels that we should be watching here on S&P? I mean, we can look at, well, we can look at SPY. 565 was the previous all-time high. We got a clear kind of pivot point there on the daily. Is that, a clear bull bear line that we should be keeping an eye on here?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's a standard, the daily downtrend confirms. Okay, then I zoom out to the weekly, and now we're testing, weekly EMA 12, last support back here. There was a little level at 565 that's trying to hold. For me, it's really the NASDAQ because, the S&P 500 has been grinding higher. The Nasdaq has the double top. And so this is, the Bears' last stand in terms of this is the only spot you can play defense with a prior level because that's the only prior level. And so, it's going to be there are no red flags on the weekly chart for the Nasdaq at this point. And is this going to be a little? It's not a good-looking cup and handle, so I hesitate to call it that. But just the psychology where you've got the rejection from resistance, and then if you bull flag, I mean, it's a cup and
Yeah.
handle type of setup, just like it was. You go to the monthly or whatever it was way back when we were talking about that cup and handle. So the weekly chart is trying to put that in. And, the rest of the year is going to be dictated by whether or not the NASDAQ convincingly rejects from this double top or heads to a new all-time high. And, if we're going to get a blow off top in the market, NASDAQ and the Russell both need to get some new all-time highs first, in my opinion.
Speaking of the Russell, and we'll talk about blow off top here, perfect segue because we want to talk about that. But IWM, higher lows, equal highs, that got that ascending triangle look as well. It seems if these, like you said, if it's about the NASDAQ and the Russell, if they start to break those highs, that's where we're going to get that end of year melt up.
Yeah, yeah. And as you mentioned, just clear higher lows on the weekly. Nothing changes from bull control as long as this keeps happening. And right now, the bulls are attempting for another little higher low compared to the last one in the 214s. And you can just see we're tightening up inside bar last week, inside bar this week. So volatility's coming here in the end of the year.
Yep. So you made a call somewhat recently. You've talked about a little bit about the kind of growing risks of a blow off kind of move here, more so that could last for a while. Some sort of a bear period. It doesn't have to be necessarily a huge bear period. It could be a consolidation period, something that where market does back off for a while. Recently, on Friday, we just had NVIDIA added to the Dow, moving Intel out. Historically, we've seen things like that near tops. Tesla added to S&P in December 2021. Intel itself added to the Dow November 99. Coinbase IPO a day before Bitcoin top in April. Just kind of, it's one of those signs where it's like, it's kind of putting the button on it, Is that do we have blow off top risk here? Into maybe like the 6,000, 6,100 plus area. And then, if so, are we looking at, should we start really aggressively harvesting some gains here?
I've started slowly harvesting gains. You put out a video over the weekend talking about selling, Microsoft position that I grabbed start of 2023. If it's going up 88 to 100% in less than 2 years, I'm going to take some profit off because that's not sustainable. But again, what I've been doing for this potential blow off scenario is laying things out in advance that I need to see because then it's just a check mark. I don't have to keep shifting my opinions. It's a very clear statement. So back in March, my dad is in his early to mid 70s. He's retired. He's, did the boomer thing where you just put your money in the market. You do not sell when it dumps or when there's fear, and then you retire and you can travel. And I've loved to see him doing that. The blueprint worked for him. Whether it works for our generation, that remains to be seen. But it's working for him. But this is the first time I've ever suggested something to him. And back in March, I sent him an email saying, "Hey, we're shaping up for this to potentially be a thing. If the S&P 500 goes another 10% plus through the summer, it's going to trigger a sit down between me and you where I'm going to be suggesting you sell some of your portfolio because again, when time is on your side, that significantly decreases risk in markets. And as you're running out of time, sitting through a 2008 when you're 75 is very different than sitting through a 2008 when you're 50. So I've been saying to him that we got that. We got the S&P 500 10% up over the summer. And the next check mark and the last one for me is what we just said, NASDAQ and Russell. If they go to all-time highs, we are shaping up for a blow off top, in my opinion. And then at that point, it's just the more you run, the more red it's likely going to be on the pullback because, you're just going up so fast and hard. You're not creating supports on the way up. It's much easier to give that move back.
Yeah, very much like 2021. We didn't have, there was zero there was zero pullback. And, starting from really, what was it, October last year or the end of October? No, yeah, April, we had like a 3-week pullback. We had a swoon in August, but that was it. Really, outside of that, there was no supports built. And I mean, pre-election year, election year, we're going into a post-election year. Those are historically the weak pockets if we're going to get one. So, you got to figure, there is at least that precedent kind of going into, if we get another 10% here into January, you're definitely going to want to be and hey, I mean, it's not going to hurt to scale out on the way up. We've had situations very reminiscent almost of Jan 2018, where we had that melt up 2017 December. It just took that secondary leg, and then we had the Volmageddon, and 2018 was pretty much a flat year, but there was a lot
Yeah.
of volatility.
Yeah, just looking at SPY right now. Again, this is the post CVID dump, and it's just a grind up all bulls. And I mean, we've got that going on right now. It's very similar price action here on the monthly chart. And so, that's what leads to the big drawdown once you do finally top. And so, yeah, it's the same concept. And again, it's just, when you see Warren Buffett selling as much as he is and sitting on a ton of cash, maybe I should have a little bit of cash, sell into some euphoria, raise some cash so that you can buy the next period of fear. I mean, the only times that I've ever grabbed long-term positions, meaning multi-year or decade mindset, is significant periods of fear. So you have to have some cash. When times are good, take a little off and protect yourself, and then have that cash ready for when there is fear. Because as we know, the pendulum just swings. It goes from
Mhm.
euphoria, and it's euphoria more than fear. Fear is fairly quick, but you get that swing for fear every now and again. And the harder we run up, the more likely that swing to fear will be closing in.
I think there's a concern where, okay, Nvidia getting added to the Dow, it's already the largest company in the market, and it's done that it went from $110 billion company to a $3 trillion company in 18 months. I don't think that's ever happened before. I'm sure. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think it is. I mean, the expansion is very fast. And what I'm referring to here, why it can be risky, is similarly, Tesla didn't do as nearly as much, but it did become a concentration risk at the end of 2021. And when it finally gave it all back, it was weighing so much down on the NASDAQ, weighing so much down on the S&P. Is Nvidia too important now to the market?
Yeah, this is a good example. So I got the 3 month chart up. Every candle's 3 months, and Tesla gave the huge run, the huge pullback. And as we know, when you get massive volatility in both directions, you scout equilibriums. Tesla's been giving us a beautiful tightening range for the last 4+ years. And again, you show me this chart on NVIDIA, 3 month time frame. We're absolutely going to see 3 month consolidation. It's going to retrace significantly, and to the tune of 40 to 50%. Even if you just do this, if let's just say we topped out here, I'm not calling a top by any means, but and you pull back this much. I mean, that's a bull flag on this long-term time frame, but that's a drawdown of 35 to 40%, and it doesn't even look like much. It's because we ran so hard. So I would absolutely be cautious. You got charts like ANF, Abercrombie and Fitch, like this 3 month chart just goes up 2,000% in less than 2 years. You're gonna pull back and retrace a significant portion of that. It's just a question of when. And obviously
You
that's
got
the hard
Wing.
part. Wing, yeah. Wing,
Yeah.
ANF, and yeah. So there's
Yeah.
the 3 month. It rolled
It's starting
over.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's unsustainable when you go up that
Yeah.
fast, that hard. You have to get back a good portion of it, and it's just price discovery, and it just evens out. It's the balancing scales between supply and demand, and Nvidia will do that. And so if it is going to be a blow off top, give me. I want it as big a run before the blow off top as possible, because the more it runs, the more confident I'm going to be in that call. And then yeah,
Mhm.
Nvidia will pull back 40%, and that'll take the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 down 25% plus with it at least. And so yeah, I mean that's what it will look like if and when it does happen. But
Yeah.
again, I just need that one more check mark. Give me the Russell and the Nasdaq, and then I start to get real confident in what I'm going to be looking for going forward.
And I mean, that's, 30%. Like that would be just the minimum. Like that's just a bull flag. Like it could go, in
Yeah.
2022, it gave back almost 70% of
Yep.
that huge run up. And, I like that you're zooming out here and using the monthly or the 3 month, because, if you look at a daily or weekly, you just say, oh, well, it consolidated for 6 months. But if you look at the monthly, it didn't do any of that. It's just parabolic the whole way. And you got to, that's the more dominant time frame, the bigger time frame. That's where it's going to do the most. So I mean, basically we're saying don't say it can't happen. It
Yeah,
has
and
happened before.
picking tops is not a good strategy long term. I'll do it every now and again, like DJT when I got high conviction, but you're not constantly looking for the top in the market. If you are, you're missing gains and losing money. So it's selling positions, taking profit, scaling out, not trying to nail it. I know I'm not going to nail the top. I take a third off of Microsoft and then I'll take another third off eventually. And, it averages out to be a solid exit, hopefully. But, and then again, it's just hedging and protecting, and we'll see it happen. I always say, bears are not sneaky. We will see high bear
Yeah.
volume. We'll see all major sectors dropping together. If that's not happening, bears aren't going to go in a significant move to the downside. So, just to have in the back of your mind, I'm watching for this, but it's not on a daily basis. So just ensure that you're following the trends, but you can be developing a counter thesis in the background, and it just has to have a clear invalidation point. I need a spot where I can say that's either the top or I'm wrong. And again, it's you can't just be doing that constantly against the trend.
Yeah, you can, yeah, like I would say, like you don't have to get the exact, just wait for the high volume engulfing candle or whatever it is. And you miss the first 2%, that's fine. Just go short there, put a stop above the high on a weekly close if you want. You risk 2-3% to make 20, you
Yeah,
know.
I missed 10% off the bottom of 2022 Microsoft and still captured 88%.
Yeah.
So
All right, awesome stuff here. Before we wrap up, is there any, just the real short term, anything we'd be looking for from the indices, maybe level wise here? What do bulls need to do in the short term, to kind of firm up as their as level bears? I want to break down here daily SPY.
I'm watching. So, I mean, obviously, the last 2 days, I'll pull up my screen again here. The last 2 days, I've got the NQ up. We're just digesting sideways, big bear day, and now a couple inside bars essentially. Pulling up ES. So, what I'm looking at is that base that's trying to hold this prior period of consolidation, and it's being tested again. But really, for me, it's the confirmed downtrend. So, here's your confirmed daily downtrend. Okay, bears proven. You can see that big red candle. And so now just do it on the weekly. When's the last time we confirmed a weekly lower high and lower low? Big drop, no confirmed downtrend. Big drop, no confirmed downtrend. So I can look back and say we have not confirmed a weekly downtrend since the bottom in 2023 here of this monthly consolidation. So it's been a year when that has not happened. So I need to have a light in my brain that flashes and says, this is now happening. And again, it won't be at the top. Maybe we pull back this much and then, I need to see a big enough retracement to then scout that lower high and grab a position on that. If I'm wrong, a new all-time high invalidates my thesis. If I'm right, we confirm the first weekly downtrend in over a year, and that glaringly stands out to us that something is different. But the current retracement that we have is not enough to look for that lower high. I would need a significant leg down. And something that I said in my recent video is markets give second chances. And there's plenty of times where you miss the big move and then it's the lower high. Here it all worked out for the bulls, but I missed the big drop. Well, there's your chance to short again. And it got a little bit of a pullback, but then bulls overpower again. So again, it just goes back to not needing to nail tops and bottoms. You get those trend changes that, follow through. And for me, it's the ES has to confirm a weekly downtrend for anything to shift from the extreme bull control of the last year.
Awesome stuff, Dan. Thanks for coming on. Real quick, one last thing. TCNNF, big inverse head and shoulders on the weekly gigabull case.
Yeah, let's pull it up. That is definitely, bull, obviously bull reaction or bull amendment
That's
three.
yeah, that's the pipe dream case. That yeah.
Yeah, it's this left shoulder head and this right shoulder. So we'd be looking, in the upper
25,
teens, 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
I personally don't use measured moves a whole lot. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just not my style. But, again, look at the 3-month time frame, or let's go even more, 6-month time frame. You get your huge move up, your huge move down. You can get an equilibrium on the long-term time frames like that. And so, yes, if we get amendment 3, I'll be looking for that monthly inverse head and shoulders to confirm.
Awesome. All right, great. Thank you, Dan, for your time. Awesome having you on here. I'm sure to have you back again soon.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you guys for watching. Again, don't forget to go find Dan at Chart Guys, Twitter, YouTube,
That'll do
anywhere
it.
else. Yep.
That'll
All right.
find him.
All right, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You guys take care, and we'll see you guys all in the next video.